All right, welcome everyone to Mastering the Sales Process for Technology Adoption. I'm excited to present this to you today. And really, this week is all about why it's kind of important to meet your buyer where they are and realize that when we're in tech devices and technology adoption is something that actually has to be absorbed. It has a product life cycle. So what are we going to do this week? Today's really about talking about the launch invasion strategy. So every time you introduce a new innovative product to the market, you want to have a launch strategy. And the launch strategy is pivotal is very important because you don't want to get blindsided. So we're going to talk and go into depth about a product launch invasion strategy, the steps and the cycle of a product life cycle, and what you need to know so you can meet your client where they are. Tomorrow, we're going to dig deeper into how to develop and land your unique value proposition so that you're speaking in the psychographic language of your client. On day 3, we're going to talk about the dip and the long haul in terms of cultivating and nurturing your pipelines so that you can gain market adoption. And day 4, we're going to dig deeper into creating evidence through your strategy that you implement for this product life cycle so that you can lead clients on their across the bridge to their transformation and truly get adoption on Main Street. And then lastly, on Friday, we're going to talk about some of the secrets to creating a comeback culture, champion culture, and how having this investment mindset for future return can be beneficial. So with that, the first thing just to think about is some of the statistics. Now, if you look at statistics just in general, the Small Business Administration says that about 46.8% of our U.S. workforce is employed by small businesses. 20% fail in year 1, 50% fail by the 5th year, and 65% fail after 10 years. And these failures, according to the Business Administration, are due to financial hurdles, whether someone got in the wrong market, maybe they lack specialized knowledge, and they had maybe bad partnership or ineffective articulation of their value proposition. But in the medical device market where we are, 75% of those failures, according to Stat News, were due to 2 primary reasons. And those are the failure to articulate that unique value proposition to the client in the language that's going to resonate with them. And then the lack of building evidence, because evidence builds certainty and belief, and people need to believe in something before they buy it and see that it's really going to work for them. And, ironically, far too many companies have achieved, regulatory, milestones or grants, but they run out of the funding before they generate sufficient evidence to convince the main market to buy the product. So there's also a lot of misconceptions psychology wise with people and companies often when they start a new business. You get really excited about the science. The science comes out of maybe the Broad, or it comes out of wherever, and it's novel, it's unique, it has real promise, but the science itself doesn't sell. It's got to be sold. People have to absorb the new information, and they need someone to help persuade them to try it, use it, and prove it to themselves. Another misconception that often happens in our industry is, you'll get an FDA clearance. I remember when I worked for a company, T2, and they got their bacterial clearance. And, there was a big fanfare, and we did a big, launch at the one of the shows for infectious diseases. And it was grand, and the stock went up for a while because there was this promise that, okay, now that you're cleared, you're going to get adoption, but that does not necessarily translate into instant adoption. That's not how it works. Grant revenues are another thing you'll see in a lot of companies where the grants are being given based upon innovation, which is great. And it really helps to get a business off, give the business some runway if they get a grant. But grants themselves are temporary. They're not going to be a long-term annuity stream for income. And any of the investors in small companies that, when they have angel investors or whatever that invest in these new companies, to get them off the ground, they're going to want a return on investment eventually. They're not going to just infinitely invest without some sort of a return. So it's real important that businesses are being, conserving their resources as they go and investing for future returns, because if you don't invest that money for a future return, you'll lose it. Another misconception that a lot of companies sometimes can fall into is that sales, can be an afterthought as opposed to a day one function. And sales really needs to be a day one function if you're running a business, because if you think about at the beginning when you're starting the sales process, you've got to get out and talk to people, and it's the building of that daily discipline of getting out to the market, talking to the market about your product, taking the feedback back into the organization, and continually refining your product and the service so that it really hits the nail or hits the bullseye on what the customer wants. And the last misconception that often can get in the way is the fact that, your earnings are not made, they're earned. So when you have a customer-centric focus instead of if you're focused on the customer and really serving the customer instead of being internally focused, you earn business through service rendered. So when you keep your eye on the customer, that really makes an impact. And so that's how you're going to get the earnings and the sales that are going to come in. And sales are earned; they're not made either. So who am I, and why does this matter, and why am I here? My name's Rhonda. I'm very passionate about med technology and improving the human condition. I've been in the business for over 38 years, and I've worked with different companies, and what I've found is that a lot of time this knowledge about thinking about a product and a launch from an investment strategy can get lost in the excitement of the new product. And people sometimes forget that there's a psychological transition that has to take place when people are going to adopt and absorb your technology to get it into the marketplace. And our job in the sales profession is really to understand the psychological background of what we're doing and why we do it, so that we can connect powerfully with customers and clients and talk to them about the new possibilities that the technology will provide. So what I want to talk about today in launching a strategy is the fact that products have life cycles just like a plant. And if you understand how these life cycles work, you will start to understand that everything in a life cycle is nonlinear. It's not a straight line. So, with technology, it has to be absorbed. And there was a book written by Jeffrey Moore called Crossing the Chasm. And this book is a great reference, especially for anyone for a product launch, because it really digs deep into the 5 different stages for product adoption. And the other thing what you have to realize is that these products, that when you introduce products to the market, there's continual waves of new products coming onto the market at all times. And it's understanding how you can get into the wave and ride the wave into Main Street that matters. So if you look at this chart, you'll notice that there's the technology in the beginning. People who love technology are what they call the tech enthusiasts. So the first time you get a product you're bringing a product to market, you go to your friends and the people that you know that love tech, and you go show them what it can do and get their feedback on it. Now, tech enthusiasts are innovators like you. So you show them your new product, and they're all interested in it because they've got that innovative mindset. They're like the people that are going to go get the iPhone 15 and know every, whiz bang feature and benefit to it before the rest of the world does, because they just absolutely love tech. So to take technology to them and get it absorbed, that's an easy thing to do. And they're usually the first to adopt anything, so they can try it out, they can give you feedback, and that's great. They're the very first stage of planting seeds in the market. The next group of the early market are what they call the visionaries. Now, this strategy of thinking about a launch and what does your product do most effectively for your market, where there's an unmet need, where you're zigging and everybody else is zagging, but there's this unmet need that could really catapult the industry. Visionaries become very important part of your strategy. And the reason you want to get a visionary is visionaries are the people who are going to get excited about tech for the vision that it provides to their community. So when you bring a product to market, you really have to think about who's your ideal customer, who's the ideal community that you are looking to place this product in. What does your product do? What is it? What problem is it solving? What unmet need is it solving? And you want to go and think about who is the key opinion leaders in that industry. So in med tech, a lot of these key opinion leaders could be doctors. It could be, people in the academic realm, in the genomics industry. A lot of those people are at what they call the genome centers, the big genome centers where they do huge projects. And the reason that the visionary endorsements are so important is that they validate your technology. These people are willing to take risk. They're very they're willing to take risk and adopt technology to take to the market, and they're willing to go and write papers, use the technology, prove that it works, and publish. And those publications can help you get adoption when you take it over to the main street. Then you've got the early majority of the pragmatists. These are the people that will adopt after the visionaries say yes. So they'll look at the data, they'll look at the proof statements, they have the evidence, but they're more concerned about, the safety of the product, like, will it work for me? And they don't want to take a lot of risk. So your ability to generate the value proposition and the evidence is really important there. But the pragmatists, unlike the early adopters who are thinking about a strategic competitive advantage, they're not looking for major changes, but they want incremental benefits from standardized, well-supported products. So they'd want surround sound, not a turntable. Could be in a production facility, and they want you to do the whole sample to answer solution as opposed to just one part of it. And that's why a lot of times coming up with partnerships when you start going into that stage to get across the chasm is so important. And then you've got conservatives, which are your later majority, and they're suspicious of all things high tech. So they're going to really jump on the bandwagon. Think about your grandparents maybe that would call the grandkids, panic because they can't find the email in their computer. They want the high quality products with no hassle involved. And then you have the last people are the skeptics and the laggards who really they're very highly resistant to any kind of new technology, and they're not going to jump on board, but they will be a good source of telling you what it is about your product that is not good or not meeting their expectations, and can provide you some ideas for your next product evolution. So when you're designing your invasion strategy and you think about marketing and in your sales process, what you want to do in the early stages is really define clearly your ideal customer profile. So that's not only your demographics, but more importantly is your psychographics. And you have to think about who is the target market, where do they live, how many people are in the marketplace, and compare, the demographics are one thing, but you want to make sure that you understand if there's a different in the psychographics of those populations. So we just described the psychographic differences in the 5 stages for product adoption. So you had the tech enthusiasts, you had the visionaries, then you had the pragmatists, the people that are more conservative that want the whole product solution. And then you have the late majority of conservatives, and then you've got your skeptics at the end who just don't like anything high tech. So recognizing those qualities when you're doing your investigation, you're deciding who you're going to garner and how to garner it makes sense. And in the process, what you want to do is be creating momentum. So the first thing I always say when I go into a company in consulting is, tell me about your product. Why did you get into business? What is it that drove you to innovate and bring this product to market? Who are your customers now, and what do they love about the product and why? And really start to narrow down where your key strengths are, because when you're defining your strategy, even if you were starting your own business and you're trying to figure out, like, what do I want to take to market, you want to be asking the questions like, who is my ideal prospect that I can serve based upon my strengths and what I have, right? That's number one. And then number two is, okay, so that's the customer profile. Now, who in that arena initially would be very receptive to hear what I have to say, and then who would be some key opinion leaders that would be able to support the vision of what my technology will do for the overall community. So when you think about your community, you're thinking about your total available market, like who you really want to serve. How big is that total available market? Who are the key players in that market? And how can you collaborate and partner with the early stage market to launch yourself across into the Main Street market? And what you're doing is it's like analogous to launching, an attack on D-Day, right? So you have to identify that one piece of land where you can launch an invasion in there and say, I'm going to claim this category because I have something for you that didn't exist before, but that product is something that you're saying you really need. It's a bleeding from the neck problem for you, and I've got the skills and the strength to service you in that specific area. And so the niche, the first of all, figuring out who your ideal avatar, ideal customer, whatever you want to call it is extremely important. And more important when you're selling is not just who they are, but recognizing the psychographics of that particular individual. Are they, where are they in technology adoption from their psychographics? Are they the early adopters, the visionaries, or the tech enthusiast, or are these people more conservative, and are they going to want the whole product solution? So you're going to have to build up the whole product solution maybe before you go and approach those people. But if you do it in the right order, just like planting a seed in the ground and nurturing it and cultivating it and knowing, like a gardener, what to do, when to do it on a timely basis so that you get the right nutrients and everything for the plant to grow, the same is with your tech, is just understanding that market and how you have to seed the market, where you start, who you go to, and how you're going to create evidence, and then, apply your persuasion techniques to the psychographics of the people you're talking to. Because at the end of the day, if we don't meet people where they are and we try to peanut butter spread the same process in everyone and not really understand that unique individual's needs, we're going to lose out, because we're not going to build connections and trust with them, and then be able to show them how to walk across the bridge to their transformation. So if you look at a category of one, value proposition, where do you want to focus your time? So you want to cut when you're one of the the main two reasons is creating this unique value proposition, and the other one's evidence. But if you're thinking about your unique value proposition, you want to focus on what your brand does really, really well and what your customer wants. You don't want to be thinking about or worrying about too much what your competition is doing. I think, people that think that, the pie is fixed are coming from a very limited perspective. And I'll just give an example. So, look at the differences. If you believe that the pie is fixed and you've got to go fight the competition and all that kind of stuff, you're really dealing from a limited concept because you're not thinking about the creation of anything new. And so a good example of that is, think about the telephones. So since Alexandra Bell created the telephones, till up until now with the iPhone with, Steve Jobs, I mean, completely different innovations have happened there, right? You can remember, who remembers the phone, the rotary dial phone that was on your mom or your grandmom's, wall, or, Green Acres TV show when there were central lines. Things evolve all the time. So you're bringing innovative technology to the market, or an innovative service to the market, which is creating something new. You can disrupt what's old, but the way you have to do that is you have to concentrate on what is it that you do well, what's your strengths, and what does your customer want. And when there's an unmet need there, a bleeding from the neck problem that's relevant and time bound for now that you can solve, that's your unique selling proposition. All time spent on what your customer does well, trying to be number two in a lane, takes a lot of opportunity cost and a lot of resources that are going to get depleted. You'd be better off going after something where you can be a category of one and be the number one, than to try to be number two and fight and compete with what somebody else does well. So, think of, an example. You have to, I guess what I'm trying to say here is, you have to be able to learn how to find that category, that unique, distinct advantage you have. And if something changes midstream, you have to know when to strategically quit, or whether to stick with what you're doing and go for mastery in what you're doing. And so an example of that is, like, if you look at Sony, if you ever watched, I don't know if I'm dating myself, but who knows about the Walkman? You know what a Walkman is. And if you don't know what a Walkman is, maybe you watch the Guardians of the Galaxy, and at the beginning of the movie, you see Chris Pratt dancing around like Star-Lord. That thing in his hand that he has there is a Walkman, and it's hooked up with headphones, right? So Sony had the Walkman, and they were the first to come out with, music, customized music on a cassette. But when Apple came out with the iPod and then had that iStore for digital music, Sony had to think about how to strategically pivot, and they did. They decided that they were going to not go for digital music because Apple had already kind of scored that ground, if you will, that niche. That's what they were going after. But instead, they did a pivot, and they said, okay, we'll go with digital gaming, units. And they were the first to market, coming out with the digital gaming units instead of the cassettes or the videos. So it's real, it's, the point is that if you can be a category of one and a go-to expert in one, less is more. And we'll talk more about that tomorrow. Now, with the getting your evidence, the second problem that most med tech companies forget to do is to really work on this evidence-based strategy. So the key to this getting end-to-end evidence is to really think about KOLs, and what a key opinion leader is. A KOL, and they can provide everything from scientific studies, papers. We talked about that, publishing papers. They could do articles for you. They could give you a customer taste case scenario or testimonial. They could also be an advisor for you and review your content and say, yeah, that'll work, or maybe not, that won't work. You could do some press releases if you're going to collaborate in partnership with them. they could aid in your education of your technology to the market. And, they can really help you position, your product for the community in a way, just by asking them something simple like, hey, in the community today, what do you see as the biggest problem? How do with this technology, how could that help, and what would be the best way to reach the people in your opinion? And that can be huge. So, selection criteria, they can help you with what the selection criteria is. And making sure it's relevant, as far as how you position it. They can, help you examine your content, your data, and provide, feedback that way. Uh, their support can really help you segment into a vertical market, and partnerships, and determining who the best partnerships might be for you for whole product solutions is another thing that KOLs can provide. So they're critical to the strategy. And so if you haven't thought about getting, whether it's, advice from your networks, from key opinion leaders in the industry, I would say research is probably, one of the biggest support components of your strategy that can really help catapult you to getting some adoption of the product. Now, another thing that happens if you're going to go to Main Street is you want to make sure that you have an effective distribution channel. So to go to Main Street means that you're moving across this chasm that Jeffrey Moore talks about. You've got to be able to get that product to many people, as opposed to the small market. Most small businesses they might do their first million, or 8 million or so in their small business, and then they really want to launch into Main Street adoption to get that product more adopted in the mainstream of everything, which means you're going to have to access a one-to-many strategy. So thinking about distribution channels of your main customers. So if you think about that pragmatist market that we talked about earlier, this would be things like, if you're selling to pharma, this would be like the Mercks, the Pfizers, the BMSs of the world. If you're selling to reference labs, this is like the Quest and the LabCorps. They're big infrastructure companies. Or if you're selling to healthcare systems like a HCA that has, all these networks within the hospitals. These are big organizations that are going to want your tech to fit into their infrastructure. So if, understanding who those big players are in the community that you serve best, and what are the alliances and the channels that they use or they prefer, and networking yourself into that for a one-to-many strategy is important to get to Main Street and get some adoption that way. But the sales process, if you look at that, is an investment for this technology. And if you're going to succeed, you have to have some patience, and you have to realize that there's going to be ramp time, and that sales are not instant coffee. You have to seed the market. You have to be going to the market to serve. And that middle section, so I always say serve, invest, transform, but that it's like plant, cultivate, and harvest. If you're going to that middle section of the investment, is that you have to adopt a mindset that is for the long term, that is based on knowing that it's compound effects that create momentum and create quantum leaps. And it's the little things you do on a daily basis that you do with repetition that start to build momentum over time. And just like a seed that has to germinate and be cultivated and germinated and nurtured, that part of the puzzle, that part of your sales funnel is really important to connect and really nurture those clients in a way with relationships. And today, more than ever, with the rise of AI, relationships and connection with clients, and that intimacy and that feeling of connection with them is really important. People's decision making when you're in a contracting market like we are in now, people are taking longer to make decisions. They're putting a lot of discernment into their decisions. So the more that you can nurture those relationships and put the time in now, you're going to get a future return. You're not going to get an instant return, but if you believe in things that you can't see, like a gardener does, believing that, I know if I plant my tomatoes, there is going to be a gestation period and I'm going to have plants, even though I can't see them growing. Sales is the same way. You've got to take that approach of a long-term investment with your clients, knowing that you're there to serve them and that what you have is going to leave them with an impression of increase. And your job is really to lead them down that path towards their transformation. And when we're selling, we want to create value. So your questioning strategy really, so doing basic discovery, asking questions is one thing. When you can really create value in your questions and drive a conversation towards value, that's the second thing that customers are going to buy. So they first, if trust and value are not present, they're not going to buy. So you're developing trust in the beginning, but through your questioning strategy, what you want to be doing with intention is creating value through questions. And it's those questions of taking people from implied needs where they say that they want it on a surface to an explicit need emotionally is really what's going to be important to really be successful. So the first thing you've got to do in the sales process is you've got to create awareness that you exist. So that means you've got to be out contacting and calling and talking to people and creating awareness. And then you've got to get them curious. You got to meet a client. You've got a client, they basically, their amygdala, and I don't know if I said the word right, but in your brain, you have basically three phases that you're going to meet everybody with, that you meet along the way. They're going to be one of three phases in their brain. They're going to be either an iguana, where their mind is closed, they're stressed out, their distractions are high, and they're just sitting there like stone-faced. And what you're going to have to do is somehow get their attention and create some interest. Or they're, once you open them up and they're involved, you could be in the Vegas party hat side of the brain, where now you've got them engaged. Now they're curious. Now you're activating their imagination. You're starting to get them to think about what life would be like with your tech. And they're very excited. But then the third part of the brain that they'll go to always when they make a decision, they'll make it emotionally, but then they're going to go to their calculator side of the brain, which is where they're going to want to demonstrate or convince themselves that they're getting an emotional or a financial value from what you offer. So when we're going through the sales process, we have to be thinking about connecting and building the trust, but also creating the value. And how are we going to demonstrate that value? Because demonstration of value is different from, you can have objections because you don't have budget or you don't have need, but that's completely different than getting an objection because it doesn't make financial sense. So a lot of times what we have to do when we're coming out with disruptive technologies, we really got to work on our business acumen skills and how we're going to demonstrate the value to them that shows them that they're, they're getting way more in use value than they are from the monetary value of what we're asking them. And the investigation is the most important part, because good people do discovery. Better sales pros do discovery with their direct questioning, and it's really going to drive them to value. And the pros now take that discovery information and really link it to the emotional needs of the clients for emotional urgency, because they pulled out things like their dominant motivators to buy. So the investigation, I think, is the most important part of the sales process, and you want to make sure you're doing a thorough investigation. But in those investigations, you want to make sure that you don't fall into the two fatal mistakes that will cause 90% of your objections. And those two mistakes are not being prepared for a sales call, not doing your due diligence on homework of available information that's on the internet, so you're not wasting time when you're with them asking them stuff that you can find out for yourself without asking them. And then the bigger one is making some assumptions, because you hear a couple things, assuming they need something that they didn't say themselves. So it's like having that patience to make sure that you state things back to them so that you're not insulting them. Because a lot of times if you make an assumption about something that they need and they say, well, they don't even get me, they're going to shut down, and you just lost your opportunity to activate their imagination and get them to walk with you across the bridge. So, what we're really talking about here is, nonlinear thinking versus linear thinking, and investment versus transactional philosophies to the whole sales process. And if you think about a philosophy, your philosophy is going to guide your attitude is going to create your actions, and your actions are going to create your results. So if you're in this game to sell med tech, it's disruptive technology, you have to have that long-term investment mindset, and you have to be thinking about over the long term for a future return, how am I going to establish trust and value? And you really have to make sure that internally you have the congruence that is going to be able to affect your sales rate. So I always say, if you're going to go sell disruptive technology, love it, baby, because if you love it and you love what you're doing, you're going to sell more and your conviction is going to be high. If you don't like what you're doing and you dread it, your attitude is not going to be where it needs to be to affect your conversion rates. Your attitude is everything. It's how you show up for the client. It's the energy that you show up with at the beginning of a call. And your conviction is your belief, right? And between your attitude and your belief, that is everything that's going to drive your success. And you have to have some patience and that investment philosophy, knowing that everything you're putting out and the value you're putting out is going to come back to you in the long run. And if you are willing to do that, you will become successful. But if you're thinking linear instead of nonlinear, if you're thinking transaction instead of investment, you're likely to fall into the chasm, and your organization is likely to fall in that chasm as well. So you have to really think back to, like what we said in the beginning, like what's the strength? Where is my product fit in the marketplace? And who am I here to serve with my strengths and the product strengths and the company strengths? Who am I really here to serve? And how can I serve that person powerfully by showing up with that attitude that, I can, and that I can attitude and that conviction and belief that's strong. Because at the end of the day, whoever's certain, when customers come to you and they inquire about your product, they're coming to you because they're uncertain about something. And it's the degree of certainty that you give back to them that allows them to walk across the bridge to their transformation. If you're not certain that it's a fit for you, they're going to pick that up, and they're going to be not certain that it's a fit for them either. So you have to make sure that you're in that state, that attitude state, when you go to make those calls that's going to help people walk across their bridge. And action is really where the receiving happens. So today, what are the things that you can take away from this that you can do for action? I would say that I would write down these 3 words: what, why, and how. And so your why is your purpose. Your why is why you're there. The why is why you're in business. You're getting into business. Why are you in business? Who do you serve? And how do you serve them? So when we connect back into the passion, we want to be a category of one and carve out a space for our unique talents and how we can bring it to the marketplace. And so you want to think about, what is it that you do that serves an unmet need for the community that you're in, that can make a positive impact, and then decide that that is the niche that you're going to go after. Because when you go after one vertical, as opposed to trying to be all things to every. It's like that saying is like the man that chases two rabbits comes home with none, right? So you really want to get intimate with that one vertical, because it's been proven that less is more, and those vertical strategies, vertical market strategies, can really pay high dividends from terms of efficiency and you just claiming your own market of one to become the go-to expert in that market. The targeted strategy, the targeted approach is better than throwing spaghetti at the wall at everyone that comes by. You don't want to be a generality. You want to be someone that's very specific. So that targeted strategy in your marketing and your sales is important. Remember that you've got to serve and speak to the psychographics first. So think about where the customer is from their adoption, their readiness to adopt technology. Where are they from a psychological standpoint, and are you meeting them there? They may not be looking for a solution. They may be aware that there are solutions, but don't know what those solutions are. They may be ready to buy a solution because they've already checked you out on the web or whatever, and they're looking to just be certain. So our job is to really meet them where they are and understand that. So you want to think about the questions that you can start asking to really pick up on the psychological, state that the client's in, and meet them where they are, and then lead them with your questioning strategy down a path that's intentional. The more ordered you get in your sales process, and sales processes are there for a reason, because processes create mastery. The more order you have in your processes, the more magnetism that you're gonna generate, and people are going to be attracted to that magnetism in the order. So know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're going to do it. And then the more that you practice with repetition, the more you're going to build that 10,000 hours mastery. Remember to play to win, not to lose. So knowing when to strategically pivot is important, and not being afraid of walking into that uncertainty sometimes is just as important, because if you keep going back to your passion and why you got into business and who you're here to serve, there's a way that with whatever new situation comes up, you can think of a creative way to solve a problem. And that's what we get paid for. And keeping your eye always on the customer, to be customer centric, not getting lost in being product or service centric is very powerful. Many customers and companies, small companies that are part of the 75% that fail, typically get attached to one thing and they don't let go of it, and they fall off the cliff because they're so attached to whatever it is that they created the first time. They're not willing to reinvent and create something new. Always recommend focusing on solutions as opposed to the problems, because when we get stuck in the problems, we get stuck. But when we focus on the solutions and always look for a way, that's where we can really create and come up with a better way to leverage our strengths. And the more, the people that play this life cycle game of these nonlinear curves, even if you think about the COVID business, right? It lasted 2 or 3 years. There were a lot of companies that came in, the early adopters, they got adoption, and they had a big spike of adoption, and then it fell off. So, all these products come in cycles based upon needs of the marketplace. So you've got to be ready to innovate, elevate, and evolve as you go, and just play the game. When one thing ends, another thing begins. So at this point, is there any questions from the group just on launching an invasion strategy and thinking about the fact that technology gets absorbed, that there are different psychographics, and how to meet those clients where they are? Any thoughts, questions? All right. I'll take that as you're good. So tomorrow we're going to have some fun. We are going to do some exercises around creating unique value propositions. So I look forward to some participation there. This is the first LinkedIn Live session that we're doing. So this is being broadcast out onto LinkedIn. And for those of you out in the LinkedIn world, if you have any questions, please DM them back to me so I can address those first thing in the morning. And we will see you tomorrow for day 2. Thanks.
Thanks, Rhonda.
You're welcome. Bye.